Hi, I'm Christopher Hine, and today we're going to be talking about Kokyu Nage. So this is going to be a Kokyu Nage overview video. Kokyu Nage is another one of these big ones, so I've been kind of doing them in the order of hardest to understand or most confusing or most involved. Kokyu Nage is a very pivotal throw to Aikido. It could be pivotal because a lot of schools call whatever throw they do the most a Kokyu Nage. So you can be in one school and they'll say, hey, this is a Kokyu Nage, and then that's not the same throw in another school at all. I personally believe that's because of what I think Kokyu means, and when you hear me saying this right now, this is coming from me. No one told me this. This is just how I interpret it, and it makes it all make sense to me. So Kokyu in English is often translated as breath. Now, breath throw sounds kind of goofy. Lots of people will tell you why they think Kokyu Nages are breath throws. I believe because Kokyu Nages generally should exhibit the quality of Kokyu that they're called Kokyu Nage. So any throw you do really well, you could call it Kokyu Nage. Now, why it's called Kokyu and meaning breath, that seems weird, but it's because I think we use, or the Japanese are using, or O-sensei is using Kokyu exactly like we would use take a breath in English, right? So, you know, if someone was freaked out and going crazy and you would say, hey man, stop, take a breath and recenter yourself and then you tell me your story or whatever. That's exactly the way I think Kokyu is being used in Aikido, which is to say that you should be in a calm and relaxed state when you're doing the throw or when you're exhibiting Kokyu. So I always tell my kids that Kokyu means calm, ready, right? So I'm calm and I'm ready, just like I would be if I took a big breath, right? So Kokyu Nages are throws that should be done from the calm and ready state. Now, when we're talking about a technical form of Kokyu for Kokyu Nage, then it has to look a certain way, because if it doesn't look that way, it's super confusing to new people. So if you explain to new people that Kokyu Nages are throws that are done from a calm, ready position, that's really not helpful to a brand new person. So I use a specific form. It matches up with the major Iwama Kokyu Nage, and I say that with a smile because in Iwama, Kokyu Nage could be a whole bunch of different things, but the main Kokyu Nage is the one that I call Kokyu Nage, and I limit our school to just that, and it's a side-by-side throw. I'll get Josh over here, and we'll go over it for you. Josh? All right, let's talk about Kokyu Nage. So the throw that I call Kokyu Nage is a side-by-side throw like this, where I come in through like this and I throw the guy, right? And I think a lot of schools call that Kokyu Nage. There are major exceptions. Aikido Dynamic Sphere has that listed as an Irimi Nage and not a Kokyu Nage. The naming convention is probably because you make an irimi on it, right? So if Josh and I are here side by side, to get into there, I have to irimi in to get into Josh, and so that makes perfect sense. I think you could call these things anything you wanted. You could call them A, B, and C throw if you wanted, right? So the name doesn't really matter as far as the technical form goes, except the fact that we all call it the same thing. So when I'm referring to a Kokyu Nage, that's what I mean by it. All right, now what makes a Kokyu Nage come off? A Kokyu Nage comes off because, and let's go sideways to the camera here, because I step behind his lower body and put my arm across the front of his body and I split him in two. And when Josh is split in two like this, it's really, really hard for him to stay standing. Now, different teachers will emphasize different ways to do this, and sometimes there's lots of arguments between styles because this way must be right or that way must be right. I'm going to give you an overview of a few of them, and you can decide for yourself which ones you want to do. I think in truth, they're all situational. Sometimes one works out better than another in different situations. The basic one that I used to work on that I liked the most was sinking lower than him here, right? So I really emphasize getting your hips lower than his hips and cutting them as far forward as you can. And then when that's done, just naturally by turning here, we get a Kokyu Nage, okay? And so that's the one that when I was working on my Kokyu Nage and I very first started teaching, that was the one I did the most because I thought it was the coolest. It required the least amount of force and got the job done really nicely. I thought it was really great. There are lots of reasons why that one might not work. One is if you got a guy with really low base, right? So let's just imagine I'm way taller than Josh. I am not. So let's imagine. And so this is as low as I can get, right? I can't do that throw. That's an impossible way to do this throw. Now, there are other versions that can be done where I emphasize a Timmy up top. And you see, I drove his upper body over, and I don't get much on his lower body because I can't get under it in that way. So I just kind of stick my foot back there, and I go through with my upper body, and I can get him to bend with my upper body coming in. That can be done with the elbow or with the hand. If you do it with the hand, a lot of times that can lead to Kokyu Nage, but that's another video. So that's another way to do it. And a lot of times you'll see this in teachers where they're really emphasizing this part. I originally thought that was bad because it was like, oh, it's terrible to hit or something. I don't know what I thought, but it's just another way to get them to bend backwards. And the way you should think about these throws is, how do I cut his legs one direction and his upper body the other direction? And that's what makes the Kokyu Nage happen. So however that can happen. You could do it as simply as having a foot back here and a hand coming up here, because that gets this same split in the body, which is a really natural way to make him fall down. If his feet stay in front and his upper body goes behind, then that will get a Kokyu Nage to come off. The main things that you want to try and emphasize are that hip connection, right? Because this will do it best, right? So if I can bump that hip, a lot of times I see people having trouble with their Kokyu Nage. It's because they're not going through his hips. So when I push my hips into his hips have to go somewhere. And so unless he's really rigidly locked, his hips are going to start moving away. And if I time that with his upper body turning, he's probably going to fall. But remember, in Aikido, even if he doesn't fall, who cares? As long as he stumbles away from me, I made the distance, which is what Nage Waza is for. All right, now, as I said, if I was pushing into his hips, come over here for me. Okay, so as I'm pushing into his hips, let's say he braces himself against this, right? So I go to move his hips, and oh, they got solid. If I sink under those, suddenly this guy will start to break down. And so that makes a really easy Kokyu Nage here for me, right? So that's the basic idea. Is I go hip to hip with this guy, and then I try and move his hips with my hips while turning my upper body to get him to fall over. If he's too stabilized, I try to shoot underneath his hips, and that's going to buck his hips forward a little more, and it's going to make an easy Kokyu Nage. If he is too low for me to do that, then I really emphasize the upper body hitting him in the face, and that breaks him back more. And as I said, that could be done even from here, right? I could do it from here, and I don't even have hip-to-hip contact. Now, that's a weaker form of Kokyu Nage, but it can be done. And why I said in the beginning that they're situational is because it depends on the guy I'm facing. If this guy's really short, he's going to be hard to throw with that sinker. If he's really tall, it's going to be easy to use that sinker. But it's going to be hard to hit him in the face because he's so tall I can't get my elbow up there, right? So imagine Josh is this much taller than me and I'm trying to elbow him. It doesn't work, right? But my center of gravity is so much lower that I can easily take him out here. So you're just adapting those methods to the person you're dealing with in order to make it work best. Now, one more thing I want to talk about in this video is, why would Kokyu Nages happen? Because you don't see Kokyu Nages a ton in sport martial arts. They happen every now and then. I've seen some highlight videos where people say, hey, look, here's a Kokyu Nage, and that's cool. You know, like two MMA guys and a Kokyu Nage comes off. It happens. But it's going to happen more in armed conflict than it happens in unarmed conflict. And the reason is because if we have a weapon, right? So let's say Josh has a weapon here. Okay, and we're struggling over this. I can't be hanging out here in front of Josh because he's going to be hitting me and switching. So I'll immediately want to pull this weapon away as far as I possibly can. Okay. Now, of course, this gives me rokyos and all kinds of things up here. But if those aren't working out for me, I might need to use a Kokyu Nage. And so in here, nudging his hips will work really nicely for me. So I'm always going to be turning to this side-by-side position. And the same is true for him. If I had a weapon and he wants to get away from this, he's going to turn to that side-by-side position. And again, here we have a setup for a Kokyu Nage. So Kokyu Nages are going to happen all the time. It is one of the higher percentage techniques you'll see in our Kaishiwaza and our Randori, right? Because it happens a lot because of where you'll want to position yourself when you don't have the weapon, right? So that's the reason Kokyu Nages are so essential to Aikido, is because they'll come up all the time. You'll be using them a ton. And then those basic pointers I gave you are the ways to start to look at it and kind of break down for yourself what Kokyu Nage is. So this is Joshua Teehee. I'm Christopher Hine, and right over there is Maya Solano McDaniel. There she is. She's right there. She's right. No, she's there. Look over there. Yes, good job. All right. Okay, we will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.